All right. I think we're live, so let's jump right in. Thank you, everyone, for joining today's webinar, Investing in the Future of Exosome Therapeutics, where we'll cover NurExone Biologic and their latest achievements and the establishment of their U.S. presence. So appreciate everyone joining today. My name is Andrew Erickson. I'm a director at Allele Capital. We at Allele work with the NurExone team, and so helping host this event today. So going to review some of the more recent corporate updates from NurExone, as well as talk about ExoTop, their new manufacturing facility in the U.S. But before we jump into the discussion today, we'll have each of the speakers introduce themselves first. So Lior, maybe you can kick things off for us.
Sure. Thank you. Pleasure being here. Good to summarize the year for us at NurExone. I'm the CEO of the company. I'm also serving as a director for the company. I'm in the company since April 2021, building the team, building the IP strategy, and also the R&D development in the company. At the moment, we have already 22 employees, and my background is more in the scientific point. I have a Ph.D. in pharmacology and my bachelor degree chemical engineering. I'm specialized in drug delivery system like we use in NurExone. In this case, we're using biological drug delivery system. A pleasure being here.
Thanks, Lior. Yoram?
Hi, my name is Yoram Drucker. I'm a serial entrepreneur from Israel. I initiated 12 different companies. 7 of them went public on different stock exchanges. I'm the founder of NurExone, and I'm serving as active chairman, and I'm doing my best to disturb as less as I can to the great team we have in the company.
Fantastic. Thanks. And Jacob?
Hi, my name is Jacob Licht. I am the CEO of ExoTop, which is a subsidiary that NurExone established, and I'll tell you more about that later. I also lead corporate development at NurExone, and I come to NurExone with more than 25 years of experience building specialty pharma and biotech companies. They all have in common that they were all intensive manufacturing endeavors. So I'm happy to be here and excited about what I'll be sharing with you today.
Fantastic. Thank you all. So to start things off, I'll hand it back over to Dr. Lior Shaltiel, CEO of NurExone. Lior, can you provide a quick kind of corporate overview and update on the company's recent progress? To kick things off here for those who maybe aren't as familiar about what you're doing and your core differentiation.
Sure. So the company is a spin-off from 2 elite universities in Israel. Back in the 2020, established a company based on licensing from the Technion and Tel Aviv University. The company became public in 2021, really relatively early in our process. We are celebrating 3.5 years as a publicly traded company. Of course, the financial reports, everything is published on time. We have very good track record. The company itself, coming from the university, has a certain license patents and also patents that we develop in the company. The main focus is to protect our core product, which called ExoP10. Though this product is actually built from 2 ingredients, to keep it simple: exosomes or extracellular vesicles, that are tiny vesicles secreted from cells, and siRNA that we are loading into those exosomes. Together, we see a synergistic effect that will show a very strong regeneration of neurons. And this is exactly what we need to address here. We are addressing central nerve system, what brain, spinal cord injury, optic nerve damage, and in the acute phase. And what we wanted to see is regeneration of neurons and functional recovery. This is the technology in a nutshell. We are at the moment as I said, with 22 employees in one of the best, stage situation in the company. We always grow. We even this year could raise significant amount of cash, including cash that entered to the company with a warrant exercise. It's already the second time we have a warrant exercise, and we can discuss it in this overview today.
Perfect. Thank you, Lior. And obviously, really interesting platform. You and the team at NurExone are building out. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the strategic focus areas of NurExone. Where you primarily focus. I heard you mention a couple of different indications, but maybe you could go a little more into the weeds on those.
So, as I said, our focus is neurology, and the first step after injury of the central nerve systems. Those neurons are very unique because, not like peripheral neurons, those injuries cannot be treated in a normal way because there is no self-healing of the nerves. The nerves are damaged for life, so to say, and we are only treating symptoms. In the peripheral, when you, let's say, cut your fingers, you get the sensoric movement and the movement of the fingers. That's not an issue. But if you have an injury of the spinal cord injury or optic nerve, everything related directly to the brain, there is no self-recovery. With that, NurExone tried to help those patients that currently are getting injured in order to reverse some of the bad activity that happened after the injury and gain again some of the functions that the patient lost.
Gotcha. Very helpful. And I know from a kind of a recency perspective, the team has put out several press releases around some exciting news for the company. Can you highlight some of the more recent kind of corporate updates you guys have recently flagged online?
So we are producing press releases in an average of every 2 weeks, and this is for the last 3.5 years. I think I'm very proud from the team that can produce such a lot of news for our investors and keep the investors very engaged in our process. We can split to 2 events. One is more financials. We could inject into the company around 3.2 million Canadian dollars with a double acceleration of warrants. And in this case, we saw 100% exercise of warrant from our investors. Think about it, investors that invest 1 or 2 years ago, they are loyal to the company and decided to raise their position and put more money in order to get the warrants and transfer it to shares. That's one that's happened just last month. And during summer and early autumn, we also published new data about our exosomes and why our exosomes are very unique or are superior from what we see in the market. And this is mainly because of the cell source that we have. This is one of the topics that Jacob will speak today because he holds the master cell bank. But to say it just as a summary, we can see in our results that our exosomes are superior with the cargo that they have. And this cargo has an influence on the efficacy. For example, if those exosomes has more certain cargo, they will have more potential to be more effective when we treat wound healing, regeneration of neurons, their activity to downregulate the inflammation after the injury. Those are the aspects that we are trying to characterize, and we can see that we are actually superior from the current exosomes that produced in the market.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lior. I think that's a great start as an overview for NurExone, and it's clear the company is focused on a disciplined execution and capital efficiency, which are obviously 2 things that investors are closely watching in today's market. So, and I think where NurExone stands out is your positioning of the exosome platform, not just as a scientific innovation, but as a value building engine moving forward toward real world therapeutic impact. So, I think that's really interesting. And now to provide some additional perspective on NurExone's scientific foundation, and direction, I'd love to invite Yoram to the discussion. So, Yoram, maybe you can start things off by sharing your vision and strategy for NurExone. I know you've been with the company, since the start, so we'd love to hear kind of what your founding vision looks like and the current direction of the company.
Thank you. So as we see, NurExone strategy is developed to two different areas. There is the public market activity, and there is the drug development and commercial activity. In the drug development, we are looking to have multiple licensing agreement as we are developing a platform technology. It's not a specific just to treat spinal cord injuries or optic nerve injuries. We have ability to load different molecules such as siRNA, which is a very small interferon molecule, on or into those exosomes, and they are homing to the damaged area like a targeted missiles. So we can do licensing agreement down the road. Of course, we are looking to develop our drug as our main proof of concept of the technology. And as I said, in commercial side, since we are holding through ExoTop, a huge master cell bank with a huge overproduction capacity, beside of supplying whatever NurExone needs, we are able to generate revenues early in the near future, second half of next year probably, and by selling those exosomes to the market. In the public market strategy, the reason we are in the public market is because the biotech company needs a lot of money. And as we said, we are trading on the TSXV, which is a very good platform, but we are looking to grow up and to list the company in the near future in the national market in the US, which we expect with God help to do it in the coming year. This is the main two blocks of the strategy of NurExone in the near 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, very helpful, very helpful. And can you tell us a little bit about how, your perspective on how you think about the scientific differentiation of NurExone, really why exosomes represent this next generation delivery mechanism, as well as the rationale behind the exotherapy approach?
Of course. So exosomes, by definition, are being used by our body. Each one of us has trillions of exosomes circulating in the body every second. And they are being used by our body to cell-to-cell communication. But they are holding properties, different properties depend on the cells that produce those exosomes. And we're using bone marrow and mesenchymal stem cells as a master cell bank because those cells are producing exosomes with three very important properties. They are homing to damaged tissue. Every place you have inflammation, you can see those exosomes going in. They have their own therapeutic properties, and we can load them with different molecules. So
the fourth one, I just want to stop you, which is relevant for us, is the ability to cross the blood-brain barrier. So we are specifically working on neurons, and this is the way to pass this barrier, get into the central nerve system, nerves.
Exactly. Thank you, Lior, for helping me in that. And having the master cell bank, which is unique, the way we are producing those exosomes in a 3-dimension bioreactor, which is also patented in US and other key territories. Having ability to load them with different molecules and offer them as a first product for central nerve system indication, as Lior mentioned, by passing the blood-brain barrier, the BBB, is very unique. We didn't see any company with those properties, with those capabilities. And I think it's a very unique sense of producing those exosomes in a patented way, having superior exosome in the market, having them in high quality, in clinical grade, so to speak, because they are part of our drug, and having the drug which approve the platform that we are developing.
Fantastic. No, that's super interesting. And like Lior and you yourself just both commented on, there's a lot of excitement around the technology here and the potential it holds. So, another question I had for you, Yoram, specifically was, obviously NurExone is in this early stage R&D development with your exotherapy, producing some exciting preclinical data. But you also have this ExoTop, manufacturing facility, which we're going to get into a little bit more in detail later with Jacob. But how would you say the company's thinking about commercial readiness, particularly as you're close to launching this ExoTop, facility, which is often different than what we see in typical drug development?
I think NurExone is a very unique position because in one hand we have, so to speak, science fiction technology we are developing, which with simple injection we are regenerating nerves in the sentinel system. But this is a long shot, which will create value as we will move forward, but it's 2-3 years from now.
Right.
In the short term, within about a year or so, since we high quality clinical grade exosomes, and we have big amount that we can sell to the market, which is growing, and it's evaluated more than $3 billion as of 2024 and growing 25% a year, we can offer to the market very high quality clinical grade exosomes, which are very unique. We didn't see a lot of companies that can produce this kind of exosomes. And having the combination of generating substantial amount of revenues within about a year or so, with a long-term or mid-term value creation as we are moving forward with the drug development, is very unique. I can tell you, I'm dealing with the biotech industry more than 25 years. I didn't see a lot of young companies with this kind of strategy and execution ability offering those two, so to speak, two sides of the stick at the same time. By the way, by having this ExoTop activity, we are reducing investment risk because we are generating revenue by ourselves. And we are expecting to reduce also future fundraising because we are talking about substantial amount of money. So it works for the value and for the cash flow stream.
Fantastic. Thank you, Yoram. That's a powerful perspective on how a strong scientific foundation drives the long-term value, right? In a market where investors are prioritizing differentiated data-driven platforms, NurExone's focus on the functional CNS regeneration really sets it apart. And like you said, you have this two-tier approach, right? Short-term revenue from ExoTop, and then longer-term with ExoP10 and its impact in the high-value markets we talked about. So I think it's really exciting. And I think that brings us to a good point to turn to one of the more recent exciting developments out in NurExone is the U.S. expansion through ExoTop, which I'll bring in Jacob to the discussion and talk about since he's going to be leading that group. So, Jacob, given ExoTop is the newest entity in development out of NurExone, maybe we can spend a few minutes kicking things off on what actually is ExoTop. What's the goal of developing this facility?
Absolutely. So as Yoram alluded to, in addition to their value as drug delivery vehicles, exosomes also have therapeutic and aesthetic value in and of themselves. And that is the core of our strategy in establishing ExoTop. So exosomes are emerging as a new frontier in regenerative beauty and health and wellness through really science-driven, minimally invasive treatment. So our decision to establish ExoTop and produce exosomes to the most rigorous standards is rooted in the fact that there is currently a robust global commercial market for exosomes. So we and others in the market believe that exosomes produced from bone marrow-derived mesenchymal stem cells are superior to exosomes derived from other sources, and that production methods matter a lot. So through our ExoTop subsidiary, NurExone is committed to producing the highest quality exosomes at GMP manufacturing standards in the world's most rigorous manufacturing environment. We're not taking shortcuts, and we're really going to produce the highest quality exosomes to meet global demand. But in addition to the existing global markets in regenerative medicine and aesthetic uses, several states in the US have enacted legislation authorizing direct, non-drug use of stem cell-derived products, including exosomes, by physicians as orthopedic wound care, pain management therapies. And exosomes and stem cell-derived products command premium prices really throughout the world. And another thing that Lior alluded to is in early 2025, we announced that we secured exclusive access to a fully characterized GMP master cell bank that provides well-characterized, exclusive source of human bone marrow-derived mesenchymal stem cells. This master cell bank ensures access to the raw materials that are the foundation for producing the exosomes that are essential for advancing our innovative therapies.
Fantastic. And
it's important to add to what Jacob said is that we own the master cell bank. There is no future royalty. There is no other company that involved in that. That is our own property, and we hold it in, of course, in the GMP conditions. and those cells are passage 0. So you cannot go higher than that. You know, 0 is the first line of cells that produce from the donor, and with that we can expand, of course.
Yeah, fantastic. And I know, Jacob, Lior, and Yoram, we've had the discussion on, the facility based in Indianapolis and the advantages to that as it pertains to biomanufacturing talent and infrastructure. But maybe, Jacob, you could spend some time talking about some of the other facility highlights and how this is going to help transition NurExone purely from this R&D development stage company to one with commercialization capabilities beyond just what NurExone's developing, but for other revenue streams.
Yeah, no, so it's critical to us to establish a foothold in the United States. And our near-term goal is to manufacture under GMP conditions to supply the global demand for bulk exosomes and mesenchymal stem cell products that can be further processed into final therapeutic products or aesthetic goods by other commercial entities. We don't intend to establish our own consumer health and beauty brand, but as some other companies have done. But the manufacturing facility that we intend to bring online in Indianapolis is where we'll produce these differentiated exosome and MSC products. Once we're able to produce GMP grade exosome and stem cell products, we intend to sell them globally. We're targeting GMP manufacture and initial sales to begin in 2026. And with respect to Indianapolis, we've targeted it for several reasons. One is access to high quality manufacturing talent and lower cost infrastructure, as well as direct access to shipping across the globe. And then with respect to our processes are very efficient, and we can produce in abundant amounts of exosomes using a small number of small capacity bioreactors. So we're really seeking to establish a relatively small manufacturing footprint, and our plant capacity will allow us to produce really beyond our most ambitious market expectations. And as I said earlier, we think establishing U.S. manufacturing capabilities will really strengthen our U.S. investor visibility, as well as present partnership opportunities in the future.
Fantastic. And I think you touched on this a little bit a minute or two ago, but just to remind myself and the audience, can you remind me what the timelines for all this is? I believe you mentioned second half 2026 there's a milestone, but what are we looking at for timelines for build out and validation of the facility?
So we're evaluating facilities as we speak, and we've kind of closed in on one opportunity that we're hoping to kind of make the site, and it's actually a kind of a retrofit or a renovation of an existing clean room, which will cut months off the timeline to come online. So we're really looking for that to really happen at the beginning of 2026, and to spend a few months just doing the renovations and retrofit and getting it up to GMP standards. And we intend to initiate manufacturing, in 2026 and have product to sell, towards the end of the year.
Okay, great. Wow. Yeah. So this is quite near term. So that's amazing there. So, well, I just want to thank you, Jacob. The ExoTop expansion, clearly highlights NurExone's transition from research to scalable commercialization, right? And as we've talked about throughout, investors are rewarding companies that de-risk as much as they can, and this improvement on manufacturing capability certainly reflects a major de-risking event on your supply chain, right? And also that revenue generation by being able to create different revenue streams, just near term outside of what NurExone's doing in your drug development. So, and not to mention, establishing the U.S. footprint in Indianapolis not only accelerates the regulatory readiness and shows commitment to the U.S. market, but also signals that NurExone is building the infrastructure needed to capture this long-term value. So, especially as we watch the exosome field mature. I think these are all really great updates, and I personally am excited to see what comes in 2026 for ExoTop. So. I think now's a good time to open up the call to the Q&A. I see
let's go for that.
A couple questions have come in since we've been talking. So And just as a reminder, if you have a question, if you're watching on LinkedIn or YouTube or wherever you're watching, you can submit in the chat box. We'll see those. So we'll give everyone watching a minute or two to submit those questions. And while we're waiting, I kind of just wanted to ask one more question to the panel, Lior, Yoram, and Jacob all together. I'd love to get each of your perspective. You each mentioned NurExone's growth phase over the near term and long term. And I just want to see, in a couple sentences, what does success look like for each of you for the company over the next 12 months, right? What should investors keep their eyes on, in that near to intermediate term? Lior, maybe you can kick things off. And then
I will take, and I also maybe also elaborate a bit more on Jacob to understand that we have a one main strategy here. Jacob and ExoTop are going to produce NurExone drug substance. You need to understand there is no engineering of exosomes. The same exosome that we use in our therapeutic, we will be used for wellness, cosmetics, and longevity. This is the same exosome, the same standards, the same, so to say, FDA and GMP production. So it's not different product, it's the same product. And in the end, we need the ExoTop, as we said, to have closer foot in the market where we want to sell, when we want to do the clinical trials in a year or so. For me, success will be, first of all, to produce a GMP. This is the next step here in ExoTop, and to do it also in parallel to facilitate our ability to get into clinical studies, because this is what is needed. We need the clinical grade to inject to human. And when we inject to human, we will be able to record and see the results. For me, this is the main focus now, to show, to sign what need to be signed with ExoTop in order to produce as soon as possible. We have, of course, also backup to produce a small amount of exosomes in Israel, and this will allow us to also produce exosomes in Israel in order to use them in Israel for compassionate use. So I would like to see also in 2026 maybe the first patient to get it as a compassionate use, as an optic nerve damage / glaucoma, or even spinal cord injury. And this is depend, of course, how fast we can be producing the clinical grade material.
Fantastic. Yoram, Jacob, anything to add to that?
I just want to say my perspective, which is divided to three different pillars. First of all, the drug development. As Lior said, if we'll be able to reach good results within about a year and a half, I think it can be very impressive in sense of success. Second layer is having a collaboration, JV, licensing with other pharma companies, because as we are developing a platform, we may see such agreements within 12 to 18 months. And the third success is having a production in ExoTop and having ability to sell the overall production that we have, those exosomes, to the open market, generating revenues. I think by having success in each one of those points, not to say all of them, it will create a great impact to the market and success to the audience and the potential investors that are looking in and following NurExone, which I think this might be a great success to all of us.
Fantastic.
Yeah. No, and I think just to put a point with the ExoTop focus, there are really three things. One is bringing the site online, initiating GMP manufacturing, and having exosomes available for commercial sale, and importantly, securing the initial contracts to sell the exosomes. So that's really priority 1, 2, and 3 for the ExoTop business.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that's great. I see a couple questions have come in. We're a little pressed on time, but I think we have time for a couple questions. So I've started to kind of filter through them, and so we'll kick off with this one, and I'll direct this all to yourself, Lior, and feel free to answer and dish off to any of the other speakers that you think make sense. But given the history in the space, how does NurExone exosomes platform how does NurExone's exosome platform differentiate from other exosome-focused biotech companies?
So this is going to the core technology, okay? It's going to how we produce the exosomes, what is the cell source we have, and in the end, what is the product that we have, which is the naive exosomes as the first layer. That's already create enough a different and superiority on the current exosomes product. We have a very strong master cell bank. We discussed it today. We didn't discuss our new patent in the US to produce those exosomes. This is actually our ability to move from 2-dimension to 3-dimension production. And the trick here, what we use, and this is the novelty, is that we use shear force in order to produce more exosomes and more potent exosomes. So it's created composition of matter of our exosomes, which make them unique, okay? And the third one is our ability not to genetically modify the cells, is actually to modify the exosomes. That create our ability to be flexible enough to create different therapies. We already in the pipeline, we have 3 different exosome loaded with different siRNA. We can continue with that, and having, as Yoram discussed before, ability to partnership with large pharmaceutical that would need good delivery systems, for example, for neurons, and load different siRNA for another targets. So it's create like a Lego, how to build your design or desire therapy. Okay, you take our exosomes, you load them with your targets or siRNA target, and you have another product. This is what unique about us. Other techniques, other company that work in the field, mainly gene modified the cell source. This we don't do, and this is very important differentiation between us and companies in the field.
Fantastic. No, that's quite helpful and quite insightful to provide that core differentiation. So another good question here that I think is worth answering before we wrap up is, how does the recently positive reported preclinical results translate into potential clinical success?
So this is already a lot of what I'm going to say is actually published in our press release during the last 2 years. We moved from spinal cord injury. We showed 2 different models in spinal cord injury: full compression, meaning cutting complete the spinal cord injury, or compression. So which is a bit more physiological approach for the spinal cord injury. In both models, we saw a very nice efficacy. And we moved from spinal cord injury to an optic nerve damage in a model of glaucoma. Also here, we saw improvement or efficacy, even in dose dependence in the last press release that we had. And the last is we have another indication working together with Professor Shulamit Levenberg as a sponsor of research in her lab. And in this case, we are targeting indication called facial nerves or facialis, people that actually lose their sensoric ability in the face, or some of the face is some kind of not moving as it should be. And also there in a rat model, we could show improvement using our exosomes loaded with siRNA against PTEN.
Fantastic. One last question, and then we'll wrap things up. So we'll keep this one quick, but I think it's important to answer is, what is NurExone's financing outlook, and how is capital being allocated to sustain some of these near-term milestones?
Yoram, you want to?
Yeah, of course. So till now, the company raised more than $20 million US dollars, most of it by private investment into public entity, PIPEs, and about 7 million of them were through warrants exercise, which, as Lior mentioned earlier, expressed our investment loyalty with the company. The company is, as I said earlier, is looking to do uplisting to the Nasdaq or to the New York Stock Exchange. And as part of it, of course, we will raise more money. Needless to say, biotechnology company needs a lot of money, and the company will raise money as we are moving forward. Having said that, we don't need a lot of money since we received already for this acute spinal cord injury. We received orphan drug designation from the FDA and the European community, which gives us lots of benefits and reduce the amount of patients we need to enroll. For example, for acute spinal cord injury, the FDA guides us that we need about 30 patients from phase 1 to A. And as we need less patients, we need less money. So we are not talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, but of course the company is looking to raise more money down the road.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that. And I think that's probably all the time we have today. I see a couple more questions in here, but we'll make sure.
I will just say something on Yoram and the last things, and it's really important. And this is also maybe give the holistic view about our strategy about the US. And you are having ExoTop actually getting more and more mature from the Toronto Stock Exchange venture. This year we were part of the best 50 companies at this stock exchange. We do think that the market in the end will be in the US, and this is actually translating our desire to submit very soon F1 and have a underwriting agreement with American banks to support us for uplisting into the US market. In the end, there we will see the investors, there we will see our clinical trials and our opportunity to develop and continue as an American company for the longer term. Perfect.
Thanks for that added insight, Lior. So yeah, like I was saying, if you submitted a question we didn't get a chance to get to, we will respond to you via email. So don't worry, we will get you an answer on that. And thank you to everyone who submitted those questions. And just to wrap things up quickly, I'll turn it back to Lior for some brief closing comments before we hop here.
So we are in the end of 2025. I think it was a very good year for us. A lot of achievement, a lot of news that we share with our investor, with our crowd. We are continue to build our very strong investor relationship. We have a monthly newsletter. We have a very strong social media that we share a lot of our activity. In the last months, we were, all the team were in several conferences sharing our knowledge with the scientific community and with the investor community. We are going, Yoram and I, we are going to be in JP Morgan in the beginning of 2026 in San Francisco. If somebody of the audience would like to meet us, happy to arrange a meeting there, and we will continue to deliver. We know how to execute. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Lior. Thank you, Jacob, and thank you, Yoram, for today's call. And thank you to all the attendees for being part of these NurExone updates. So look forward to sharing continued updates throughout the rest of the year and into 2026. And thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Thank you.